right, folks, welcome all to the program To The Point for this morning. And as I hinted to you, I've got with me none other than my good friend, Mr. Sylvan McIntyre. He thinks he's retired. I doubt that. He never, as Bishop Dale Bronner was saying on a message yesterday, you don't retire from something, you retire to something. And Mr. McIntyre this morning is acting in his capacity as a disaster risk management specialist. And this morning we're talking risk reduction as always. Good morning, bro.
Good morning, Innocent. I am fine. I'm absolutely fine.
Good. All right. Okay. Well, that's your role. I mean, I've spoken with you on a number of occasions in a previous dispensation. That time you were attached to NADMAN. We had quite a number of conversations. So I know that that's your forte. And disaster comes in a plethora of ways. But this morning we'll be zeroing in on what's current and what's trending now. The athletic season is on.
Correct.
And a number of things can happen. Mm-hmm. So that's where we want to start off.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Okay, so let's get into the meat of the matter. From an athletic standpoint, what can go wrong?
A lot.
Okay.
Yeah, but before I really delve into that aspect of it, I think I owe it to the listening and viewing audiences out there to give my gratitude, express it for all the support that I have been given over the years in various capacities, and for all those individuals, instruments, organizations, and so forth, associates that have, contributed to my illustrious, successful career. And as you said, I retired from one field, retired into another, but I'm not tired.
Okay.
And very soon there will be announcement as to my new portfolio.
Okay.
I have definitely accepted a new portfolio. It is still within the sphere of service. I want to be able to continue as long as the Almighty afford me to do so, to contribute to the development of this dear country that I love, a lot of us love, and this region that we've all grown to recognize it's the best place in the world to be.
Of course.
And so we want to keep Grenada safe, and that's one of the other angles of my professional career, safety. And we want to be able to prepare for crises and, emergencies that can turn into disasters, etc. And I would want to be able to contribute to that again as much and as long as I could. But as I indicated before, there will definitely be a general announcement. We do have some persons from external coming here to Grenada maybe in 2 weeks, a week to 2 weeks, just after the independence. And there will be some announcement as to what my new portfolio and how I will be serving this country. So obviously, The state will be informed, the government will be informed, and the agencies responsible as to my new portfolio. I'm sure that my viewers, followers, and supporters out there, they'll be happy that I have not gone off into hibernation somewhere or into secession and become very quiet and reserved in the bottom line. I think I have a lot to give still. I want to be able to do that. There are a few of us. I think we are in limited edition on this earth, innocent. And if God has placed us here to do something, I think we should do it and maximize it. I do not have any regrets of my previous contributions. All I do have is gratitude, and I feel elated for those people who express how much I have impacted their lives and will continue to do so. And definitely very still energized. I had a week on Carriacou and PT Martinique last week, very intense, and that involved community emergency response team training. And so I think one of my calling is, to deal with people, to empower communities. The youth in particular, I have worked with them for quite a number of years, and I think this is a reflection of my youthful appearance at times, that some of the youth have actually rubbed off on me. But it has been my pleasure to work on the island of Carriacou and PT Martinique. The folks there, I want to express that they were very supportive. I want to say publicly, thanks to the support for the SAO in the Ministry of Carriacou and PT Martinique Affairs. They did give us tremendous support. The RC Church right there as well, and the community, the NADMA agency, Ms. Data and her team, they really gave us some support. And the YAC, Youth Emergency Action Committee folks. They are tremendous. They are doing some work in PT Martinique right now, helping people create community disaster plans, etc. And we do not want this to go unnoticed. And forgive me for this extensive introduction of me.
No, it's merited.
Yes.
It's
and so we're trying to build people into communities that can become more resilient in Grenada, Carriacou, PT Martinique, and I'm really happy that there's a team of about 4 young persons there working with homes and going through, and they're actually walking through with people as to how to create these plans. I want to also say that NADMA have been very supportive of this initiative. We said this on this platform before, that the work that I will continue to do and the other people are doing is in support of the national agenda. Okay. And we want people to know that. We're not a separate entity. We're not going to be creating another NADMA somewhere else. We are conscious of what the intent is and are, and so we are in support of building what NADMA has started or they have responsibility strategically for. And so what we do is an ease to what they are supposed to be doing. We help in that sense. You will also recognize, it's a good time to say as well, that I do belong to another entity, Disaster Risk, CDRMS, Caribbean Disaster Risk Management Solutions. That's a company that's established within the region. I'm the father of that organization as well.
Wow.
And it involves a number of American, Grenadian, Canadian who part of that diaspora, and a few technical people here from Grenada. We've formed that conglomerate of experts to really continue to deliver service to Grenada. And this is separate and distinct from what my other assignment happens to be. So I wanted to put this into context, and that people can see that my life and our life and the people of us, those of us who become technically inclined to disaster risk reduction, we want to be able to continue to deliver that in a genuine way until we can build the other generation to take up from us. I will not feel comfortable, and if I happen to pass, God forbid, sometime, I will not rest. I will harass people every day and every night if disaster risk reduction is not factored in prominently on the agendas of governments, institutions, workplaces, both private and public. Yeah.
And that's not just Grenada, throughout the region.
It's throughout the region. Yeah.
I'm happy with the fact that you've excelled so much in that field that you're now having not just local but regional and even international recognition for your contributions in the field of risk management and mitigation and so forth.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting with royalty this morning.
Well, I'm still humbled, you know, and I am who I am because of the grace of God and the people that I walk around who've made me who I am.
Yeah.
And you are who you are by, you know, let your character define you. And I think by all means, you know, people have defined me. And I take humility in that, and I give, solace to the Almighty for what I have achieved and will still continue to do. So as we continue to move forward, you would see at community levels, I would be giving voluntary contributions in the aspects of CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, something we recognize that should be household. We've seen quite a number of occurrences across the globe that happen. We've seen a lot here happening in Grenada where it is not administered appropriately. And so my intention is to ensure at least, if I can achieve that, 90% of households in Grenada have at least one person who knows CPR. Mm-hmm. We could be assured that we'll be better off. So what we're seeing is an increase in that because of some of the things we've been doing and the other entities who have been driving it as well. We're seeing Grenada becoming a bit more resilient and becoming more knowledgeable.
Yeah, having said that, that's a concern of mine because I listened to a previous program with you and my colleague GT previously, and it dawned on me that I'm usually referred to as a jack of all trades, master of a few, but CPR is not one of them.
Okay, so hold it right there. The last program I was on virtually was with JC. You have a JC?
Yeah,
GBN?
Joseph Kador.
That's correct. Yeah. And I did give him some assignment.
Yeah, I heard that.
I was in North America at the time. So I gave him an assignment and I said, you should go to and find out from me.
Go to management and find out what is the plan and things.
And whether or not the staff of the GBN, they are trained in first aid and CPR. And the other aspect of it was as to whether or not GBN does have a defibrillator, an AED, automated external defibrillator. What this instrument is to do, it complements CPR, or in the event somebody doesn't know CPR but they can use the instrument, it's automated, it speaks to you. So it's like what the jumper cable is to a vehicle. That is what it is to the body.
Jumpstart the heart.
Jumpstart the heart. So you can put one of the tags on the upper left quadrant and one on the bottom right, or in the case of a child, one at the back, one at the front, and so it will analyze whether or not, if somebody has a heart failure, you suspect that they collapse, the heart is not beating or otherwise, you put this instrument on, it would say, once you turn it on, it says analyzing. It will analyze the level. The heart goes into a position called fibrillation, meaning that it stops pump and beat and so forth.
Well, it's not dead as yet.
It's not. So a defibrillator, it defibrillates that process. It will resuscitate, it will bring it back with a kick. So that instrument will analyze whether or not the heart is so low or totally shut off that it requires a shock to take it back. So the instrument would speak and say, automated, analyzing. If it analyzes and a shock is required, it will say shock required. And shock required, it will say stand back or stand clear of the victim, because you, as an individual, your heart would be pumping and working at normal. You don't want it to be shocked by any other instrument, because that could send it out of rhythm and you can have side effects, or you can have a counter effect of that instrument. So it would say stand back or stand clear. Person stand clear, it says shock required. It would shock the person, a sudden jolt, and then it would say shock administered. You stand back and the person may resuscitate. Because what happens when somebody collapses, the heart sits there, the blood sits there, and people understand that the blood, that's the motor that brings the nutrients across the body. So you have the oxygen that goes along through the bloodstream, and you have the bloods with different components that would go across the body to keep it moving. If it is sitting right there, nothing will happen. So that shock would send it around. Similar, if you're doing compression on the chest, you would be pumping like the heart, and it would send it around. And all the person's body may require, it's just a little bit of energy, or a little bit of nutrients to get along. So now that we've spoken about that, we want to be able to be very current. We understand there are quite a number of sporting events that are planned. There are some of them that are happening as we speak. I know over the weekend, I think one of the primary schools, St. Mary's or otherwise, they did have the athletic sports. There were there are a number of them.
There were a number, for example, in St. David, there were 2 sporting activities last week, one Thursday and one Friday, or something like that.
Okay, absolutely. And the question is whether or not you understand from your own information whether there was a response system assigned to that sport meet, whether there were people there who were medically trained, whether there were first aiders there, whether there were equipment there that if somebody collapsed that they could have taken them. The point I'm trying to bring across, that we have to institutionalize some things, especially in emergency response. We should no longer take it for granted that people will do. It is the responsibility now, if it has not been done, of the state mechanism. And so it has to be enshrined through an instrument, through a document, through a policy, through a plan, that people who are hosting events of a particular magnitude should have X amount. And even if it is not at a particular magnitude, if it is just an event at all, where you're not just taking people, where you're taking people not just of your own household, but from anywhere, you should have some emergency response capacity present so that you can deal with it.
That is a very important point that you raised, because it has been a concern of mine even before you're saying this, that you go to village activities, like they have village football tournaments, cricket tournaments, and that's contact sports.
Right.
And you cannot see an established medical team anywhere around. I've been to sporting events already where, just recently a guy had a broken thumb.
Yes.
And stuff like that. So, hence the reason why this point that you made, that it should have national implication. Yeah. It has to be part of the plan.
Yes.
That whenever these activities are being held, there must be, or else permission not given.
Yes. Because it is and thank you for the expansion of that. It is a requirement for any school or any person wanting to have a particular size event to apply for permission. One, they will apply to the ministries for permission to use the facilities and recreational fields around. The other one they would do, if they would have music or people at a particular level, they have to apply for security. And unless these things, if the permission is not given, the event can't be held. Ministry have to approve the ground. And there should be some condition and some questions that are asked as to what is the emergency response arrangement that you have. And this is not asked on many occasions. Somebody should prove me wrong. And I am not too sure whether it is a requirement or a condition to host. I am saying here that if this is not the case, that Grenada, you have to go that way.
Yeah.
One life is one too many to lose. And there are some incidences that occur, and they will be exacerbated. They will become worse because it is widely established that the first or the initial intervention is most critical. That could lead in saving of lives, preventing an injury from becoming worse, or promoting recovery. And the golden hour, the first few minutes after something has happened, is most critical. It could spell life or death, or somebody becoming a vegetable, or somebody losing a limb. We've had that situation, and I spoke about it with I think Damian Hammond from the Buffalo Bills a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
that guy was struck down in a contact sport, and
he was dead.
He was dead.
Yeah,
basically.
He was dead.
But again, because of the intervention of the people who were there, it was very, very timely. They had responders on site. They were able to rush there, and they were able to do CPR. And I'm speaking about CPR, and I want to let our audiences know that now chest compression is the only requirement that you can do to resuscitate someone. The breath is not absolute. People can still do it if they choose to, but just the chest compression is adequate for helping somebody to resuscitate after some kind of emergency.
All right. Rearrange my ignorance here. CPR, what does that really mean?
C is for cardio. P is for pulmonary, and the R is for resuscitation.
So pulmonary has to do with the heart and the lungs.
And the lungs, absolutely. So people understand, you say cardiac arrest, cardiovascular exercise, so forth. That has to do with the heart. And so we talk about pulmonary arteries, we talk about pulmonary veins, we speak about that connection between the heart, the lungs, etc. So once you understand, we speak about heart and lungs, what's the connection there? And we speak about resuscitation, what is resuscitation. So resuscitation simply means to bring back something that is
to revive,
is dormant, something that is dead almost, or otherwise, to revive. So that's the process, CPR. It's not called police or run. It means cardiopulmonary resuscitation.
I like this. I like it. Called police or run.
Yeah.
I like this, CPR.
Yeah.
Folks, I'm speaking with Mr. Sylvan McIntyre. He is a disaster risk management specialist, and we're talking the management of risk. We take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I want you folks to play these 3 games from the NLA. Daily pick 3 cash flow and play with. You will be supporting sports and culture, nation building and our future. So go out and play, folks, make it a must. You will see what the National Lottery is doing for us. When you play pick 3 cash flow and play with, the NLA will support you all the way.
Starting September 30th, Monday to Friday, these 3 games will be drawn mid-morning, 9:45 a.m., midday, 12:45 p.m., and evenings, 7:45 p.m. The National Lotteries, supporting sports, culture, and nation building.
Sunday money
Rep your colors. Hot 98 presents the 473 Colors Boat Ride. Going on Saturday, February 4. Get your tickets now at gotofed.com for only $65. Food included. Boarding time 7 p.m. The boat sails at 7:30. Music on board by the Hot 98 DJs plus other guest DJs.
Baby, calm down, calm down.
Rep your colors on the boat, cause this one here is gonna be epic. Lock the date, Saturday, February 4th, Hot 98, 473 Colors Boat Ride. Don't you miss this.
Did you know that our changing climate is disrupting weather patterns and continues to cause more intense weather systems? Did you know that at least 3/4 of natural disasters are water-related and their intensity and frequency is increasing? Did you know that rising sea levels can cause our fresh water to become contaminated or salty? These are just some of the realities that will be examined in our new series, Our Climate Reality, which premieres on Wednesday, February 1st from 8 p.m. on all GBN platforms. Our Climate Reality will engage local, regional, and international stakeholders in this fight to preserve our planet and our most precious resources. Our Climate Reality, brought to you in part by the Grenada Climate Resilient Water Sector and Habats. GBN Television News at 7, a pulse on all things Grenadian. Look out for our new features through expanded synergies with our media partners in Barbados, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Trinidad, and beyond. Capturing the latest in news, sports, weather, and entertainment. Credible, informative. Thank you for making us number one. News at 7, live, Monday to Friday on GBN Television, Channel 7 and 11. K105.5 and 105.9, Hot 98.5 and 98.7, GBN Television Facebook page and YouTube channel, and www.gb.
All right, welcome back, viewers and listeners. We're on to the point this morning, and I'm speaking with Risk Disaster Management Specialist, my good friend Sylvan McIntyre, and we're talking risk in general. And of course, you know, we're interactive, so you can always call in. You have your questions, you have your concerns, you've got a contribution that you'd like to make. Give us a call, 435-2041. That's the number. And let's just get it to the point this morning. We're getting back into what's present. We're into the athletic season.
Yeah.
And so many things can go wrong.
Yeah.
Can you highlight some of the things that can go wrong and what can we do as a precursor to it, something going wrong? And in the event that it goes wrong, what are the immediate steps that we can take?
Yeah. And so anyone wishing to host any event or any organization, they first need to understand that you're accepting a particular type of risk. You are accepting responsibility for people. And I see that you nod your head, and sometimes it doesn't sink in that much that people realize that if you're hosting an event, you are responsible for the lives of people.
Hold on, just pause. Don't stop. Pause. I'll unpause you momentarily. It opens, you see, that conversation opens up so many facets because something comes into mind. In making requests for an event, do they ask you about insurance coverage?
Right. So they do as well, because the events, I'm sure if you request the auditorium at the Grenada Boys Secondary or the National Stadium, there would be a cost for insurance. So there's a requirement for insurance for events. That risk is associated with it. The other point is there any requirement for ensuring that we have an emergency response team and system on site? I would hope that somebody can call in and prove me wrong, that all these things are in existence, they're locked down, and it's just the enforcement that's not happening. So you see, I'm touching another angle.
Yeah.
There are a lot of instruments and requirements that we have, but they do not happen.
The enforcement is not.
And the enforcement aspect of it is the breakdown.
Wow.
Things are there, and people don't enforce them. We look at situations across the country where there are incidences occurring and so forth, and people say, is that legal? Is it not legal? Well, it's on the books, but are we really finding people for them? Are we really following through and letting people know that that's an offense? I mean, spitting in certain places, urinating in certain places and all of that, litter in certain places. Are we really charging people for these things? The law speaks to these things.
We see people barbecuing on the sidewalks and everything.
It speaks about fire, where you should host fire and everything. So the other, you would ask, should we or should we not have them on the books if they're not required? And in my past professional career as a police, I insisted that if you don't want it to be enforced, do not legislate it, because I would be one of those who will ensure that it is enforced.
And then you become most unpopular person.
You should be. I remember one time Justice St. Paul's Lai said there is no such thing as a nice police.
Okay.
But you should be.
Yes.
But people would not. And officers, I express my empathy with what you face in terms of the abuse from people. But people do not favor those who stand up for right. People like freedom. They just want to do stuff anyhow. And the average person maybe. And so those who stand up for it are framed not to be the nice ones. But you should stand up for what is right. So the point we are making here is that there should be legislations, there should be instruments that guide mass events or events of a particular magnitude, or any events where you are inviting people to be a part of outside of your home. There should be some guiding principle. I reiterate, and that should be driven by legislation. Yeah. It has to be enforced by some mechanism, not necessarily police officers. People tend to believe that police are the only law enforcement people. That's not true. Customs do have law enforcement. Prisons have an aspect of law enforcement. Even civilians have an aspect of law enforcement, and security guards in different places, and other persons like wardens. They are responsible for law enforcement. For when you look at it, there are different strata, there are different tiers of law enforcement that everybody has a part to play. So when something happens, for instance, there is a health issue, it does not require a police officer to enforce a health issue. Health officers are equally empowered to enforce. They can cause people to be detained, they can cause people to be arrested, they can cause things to be confiscated, they can cause things to be locked down because there is a violation, and the law is very clear on that. So my point is, maybe that's the bigger point of the entire day, that emergency management, emergency response, risk management must be reflected in some aspect of legislation, particularly where we are bringing children and other persons to be part of. So let us speak about the sporting events and what can happen. Just about anything can happen. So when people are invited to be part of an environment that they're not used to, different things could happen. So we can have different kinds of accidents. People can fall off stairs. There can be motor collisions. There can be clashes if it is a contact sport. There can be fire that can be ignited as a result of combustible items or otherwise flammable things that people may bring into the event. You may hear at Soca, Monarch, and other places, the police say do not bring these aerosol cans and all these things with the cigarette lighters. People would flame them and so forth. Open flames, they would speak about that. And you can have other track and field emergency where people can clash each other and they can fall, they can trip. You can have fractures, you can have strains, you can have sprains, you can have cramps and the like. You can have people who goes down with asthma attack. You can have fainting. You can have even seizures that can occur. People who may not have exhibited those symptoms before, that can occur. And you can have cramps and the likes. That all of these things can occur at events. So, what does that say to us? One, the people who are hosting the event must ensure that there's a mechanism for dealing and responding. So all of these things that I have mentioned, and it's not an exhaustive list, the planners, the organizers, the managers of the event have to list these things and have a checklist. Tick it off. If this is likely to happen, what do we have in place to deal with it? So there is what you call a risk assessment or a risk analysis of the event. The type of event that you are hosting will carry with it a different kind of risk. There are general risks that may be prevalent, and there are others that will come on as a result of this event. If we are bringing in a president from outside of Grenada, if you're bringing in an artist from outside of Grenada, that carries it at different risk. You may see if you have a president or otherwise a high-level official then the risk of sabotage, terrorism, attack, and all of these things, there will be heightened awareness and heightened activities to mitigate that or to prevent that from happening. If you have an event where you're bringing in a very popular artist from somewhere, or maybe a popular, very popular athlete for that matter, that will increase, it will create more anxiety. There'll be greater adrenaline flow from participants, patrons, etc. And therefore, the likelihood of something happening is greater. It means that in doing a risk assessment, it will determine who you will have and the number of persons you require to have. And this is why when people are hosting events, they may make an application to the police and say, we want 4 police officers. And the police would say to them, what determine the amount of officers you require? And it should be the reverse.
The police should dictate that.
Of course.
The police should dictate
you should tell the police what you're intending to have. Sit to the police and say what it is. You look at the risk involved. The police will tell you if you're going to be having something of this magnitude, because you're not the security professional. You're the person, an event manager, technically, or you're just a facilitator of an event. Sometimes you're not even necessarily a trained event manager. You just decided this is...
You just ups and become a promoter.
Carnival coming.
I'm doing a show.
I need to make some dollars. I have a good friend. I've been to Jamaica a couple of times and I've made some friends. I want to invite one of them from a friend of my friend to be able to come into Grenada. We're going to have a show. And you don't know how to tell a lot of it, or the intricate details. I decided to have it. You need now the specialists, and that's why people like ourselves will always be technically in demand, because people need to check the experts to find out what is your take on this. You check the police, what is your advice on this, and what is the requirement for this. Having considered that, it will say to you, you would need, we've heard on many occasions people say that we need 20 police officers for Soca Monarch. Well, what crowd would Soca Monarch really have? And what are the risk factors involved? We know that.
We have a caller on the line. Let
us entertain him, no problem.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Gordon, and good morning, Mr. McIntyre.
Good morning, sir.
McIntyre, congratulations. I think we need badly to address the area of risk in Grenada. However, is there a difference between risk management and risk mitigation? If there is, help me to understand the difference between both of them and how it implies or applies in your daily activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller.
Very good question, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you for the commendation that you've given. Yes, there's definitely a difference, a marked difference between risk management and risk mitigation. Management implies the management and being in charge of or having oversight of the risk issues that are involved. Now, risk speaks about the level of vulnerability that a country, an individual, an asset is exposed to, and it comes in stages of category. It could be high, medium, it could be low risk. And so it depends on the extenuating factors or external or otherwise, it will say what level of risk that is associated with it. Now, having taken that into consideration, risk management are all of the things, the mechanisms or strategies that one put in place to manage or to take care of that. Now, risk mitigation happens to be when something is perceived or is likely to happen. You may not be able to prevent it, but you are able to minimize the extent to which it is likely to happen, and that is mitigation. So mitigation in itself comes in two forms. It is either structural or non-structural. So you can have physical things that you implement to minimize the impact or the effect of something, or you can have non-structural, meaning you put instruments like legislations and rules and policies in place to reduce the levels at which that is likely to happen. And that is where the difference between risk mitigation and risk management.
So in essence, it's the sort of opposing ends, proactive and reactive.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
We have another caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Innocent, and morning to Sylvan.
Hey, morning. How are you, man?
I did, and most people know that this area is one of my particular interests in not just risk management, but how we deal with disaster, how we manage it, how we engage people, what we do before, what we do after. Mr. Sylvan, I want to let you remember let me get the name. The Grenada post-social, psychosocial, the Grenada disaster psychosocial response, post-disaster psychosocial response.
Yeah.
Could you tell me what happened to this? I know you're not in the government system, but could you tell me what really happened to that?
Okay.
2,500 copies that were told by an official in ARD were published. And over the years, when I asked various people across the government system, and even in the private sector, even Red Cross, nobody knew about that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Caller.
So, Caller, thank you for that question. I will answer it, and I hope I can do it, right? So, you're raising the right issues, and it speaks to what we do with lessons learned, or whether we actually had lessons learned, or just events occurring. And what we do with it is the other question. Post-Hurricane Ivan, there is the psychosocial aspect of people's life that we recognize was a weakness. And so the psychosocial support, that is the intervention that is implemented after there is a traumatic situation. It could be widespread, like national, it could be group or zones, and it could be individuals. So there is some level of support that is supposed to be provided to entities and organizations, and in particular individuals, as to how to cope and deal with that situation. And so it speaks to not necessarily medication in terms of that intervention, but it speaks of the kind of a support mechanism that you afford to people, including counseling and debriefing, meaning that you speak to them after the situation has happened, and not just to the people who are involved. The victims are one, and then associates of the victims are
family
also
members and close associates and so forth.
Yes. And so in 2004, post-Hurricane Ivan, there was an August Select Committee, a group, that were called together to look at that intervention, and an instrument was designed. I sat on that committee. I think the caller may have been on that as well. We had a few international actors sit with us, and an instrument was designed. Obviously, when you design an instrument, there is need for update and revision over the years. I know I was provided with a copy of that. There were quite a number of copies that were printed and should have been circulated to various entities and ministries. Maybe, caller, I fall in the context like the others. I know among all of the other books that I have in my library and archive that should be one of those. I came across it a couple years, maybe not too long ago, but it was generated. It should be in existence. And the point is that the caller was making, if it cannot be found, effort should be made to recreate. And the people who sat, and there are technical people who are trained and are able to do it today. And we are saying that while we understand that there is the Ministry of Social Development, etc., that are responsible for that psychosocial and counseling support of individuals, we are also saying that that instrument, if it is sitting dead or somewhere on a shelf, it should be revived, and it should become an operative instrument that institutions can be guided by. There might be areas in it that need to be upgraded, or maybe there is a new one that is created that we aren't aware of. If that is the case, it should be made a public document that people can have access to.
We have another caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Good morning to you, and good morning to Mr. McIntyre.
Hello, morning, sir.
Yeah, very, very, very good information. A man with a wealth of knowledge. I know him in person, and I know that he has a wealth of knowledge. But I think we need more publicity in those things, and that is lacking. School children, is the school aware of it? Clubs, organization. You know, one of the things that we forget is that the politicians make the law. But who causes the people to break the law the most? The same politicians. You know, you see people doing all kind of things side of the road. People billing to come right out to the road, and they're getting passed. And you have organizations that's supposed to fail you or see what you do. But you know, the politician could give you a slap on the hand and tell you, well, go ahead and think, man, don't worry yourself. You understand? So the breakers of the laws, they make the laws in the parliament, but they break the laws. and they put the police in sometimes in a very tight spot to implement the laws. So we need more public education, and we need more people like Mr. McIntyre to go about and explain to people, because it's not something that people go to learn just easy like that.
Okay, thank you, caller. You can respond?
Yeah, I can. There are some areas that we wish not to specifically address. The politics of things, I do not walk down this line. I've been a public servant, and I stay between the lines of being a very professional person. But if I need to speak about law enforcement and adherence to law and policy, there's a general saying that no one is above the law. Yeah, and anyone, regardless of who you are, need to be able to be upkeepers and upholders of the law, whether you're part of designing it or whether you're one of the persons that is expected to obey it. Once something's become law, it becomes supreme, and everybody is subject to it.
I'm going to deviate just for a millisecond here, as it relates to abiding with the law and so forth. You're a lawman. There's something that I'm seeing, and people are, pointing it out to me. But I do not want to touch it until I did my proper research, so that, the issue of campaigning, the paraphernalia and so forth from campaigning, we're seeing quite a number of them up still.
Oh.
Isn't there a law that says at a certain given time after the election period they should be removed and so forth?
Yeah, there's definitely an aspect of legislation that speaks to the time leading up to an election, and particularly within the ballot areas, the 100-meter mark, that everything should be taken down. It is the responsibility of political parties, and it is also the responsibilities of the state to ensure that these things are taken down. I am not quite sure, and I do not want to speak too much on this, in terms of if it was not done prior. I am sure of the areas within the
polling
division stations and so forth, that it must be taken down. But when it is announced, it says that specifically the colors and the campaign things, they should cease I think the midnight before the election. But I think the gray area there is, it happens to be the things that are up outside of those polling stations. And what we've seen in most cases, I checked it out myself, it happened to be, maybe you might have seen some in some cases where they were within the zone. I'm not too sure. I did not. But I know there are quite a number of them, even today, that they are still up outside of the area. So someone who, I did not go deep into checking that aspect of it, I know very clearly that is inside the area, and it is the midnight before the casting of the ballots. But as to the extent of staying beyond, it is a matter of maybe whether or not the state consider it littering or otherwise, or they can take them down.
Okay, a number of people, called in and met me and saying, listen, this is something you have to talk about, but I have to be very careful, I don't want to talk about it, and then, so I'll follow up on this.
We could follow up on that, but I don't think that aspect of it outside of the balloting polling areas, definitely, I'm not too sure that the law speaks to it outside of that. Maybe if that was the case, you probably might have seen a stronger enforcement in ensuring that these things are pulled down.
All right. Let's just take a quick interactive minute with our Facebook users. Sonia Mitchell says, good morning, everyone. Yulin Alexander says, wow, lots of interesting information there, Mr. McIntyre. Alicia Alexander says, good morning, Grenada. Agnes Mitchell says, excellent pointers. Hope it reaches the appropriate levels of government. Let me see. Agnes Mitchell, for those who chose to urinate in public, they should be charged with indecent exposures. This should be law. The town of Grenville stinks from urination.
Wow. Okay.
And there's a law against it?
Yeah, the law speaks of aspect of, as I mentioned, the spitting in public, urinating in a public place, exposing your private aspect of your body in public and all that. It speaks to aspect of that. There are some little intricate details on it, but they are reflected in our law that should be enforced, really and truly.
Because, I mean, you just said you came from North America. And you can't do that.
Oh, no, you can't. Well, you could do it, but don't be caught doing it.
Don't be caught, yeah.
Yes.
Canada is the worst place for that.
I mean, this morning I was driving up the street and there was a vehicle in front of me, and then there came a plastic bottle out the window on the street.
Yeah.
How can you do that?
Yeah, you can't do that out there.
I mean, it speaks to quite a number of things.
Personal hygiene.
How we are cultured.
Yeah.
The respect that we have, and how, I spoke to people outside of Grenada. There was a Jamaican Aruban that I spoke to, and she came to Grenada, and I said, what's your impression? One of it, clean. I spoke to a Bajan guy one time, and I asked, what was it? Clean. Grenada is clean. And so, while I have seen it myself, I'm not satisfied with the level of cleanliness of Grenada, but the impression for visitors is that we have a clean island, and we could make it cleaner and better. Yeah. So the individuals who think it okay to be dropping things out of the windows, pulling out your extensions and having it in public and urinating, etc., and just spitting anywhere and drop it. It's something that I think we can become more forceful in ensuring that as we become more tourism centric, maybe because we are looking at economic drivers and sustainers of economy, and we understand the impact and importance of tourism, and I think people have to become more conscious. And apart from us keeping an environment nice and clean for tourists, for ourselves, our own pride. We love Grenada. We want to see Grenada clean, pretty, and nice. Personally, I would love that. So I want to ensure that Grenada is maintained for us. We want to ensure that Grenada is not just secure. People talk about people coming here, and we have to ensure that they're safe. What about us?
What about us?
We have to first love what we have. I love it to the point that we want to sell it to others.
My grandmother always said, you can't give what you don't have.
Correct.
Yeah. So if you were not secured, how could you sell security to visitors? Folks, we got to take a commercial break. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't you go anywhere. This is To The Point. I'm speaking with Mr. Sylvan McIntyre. He is a disaster risk management specialist, and that's what we talk on Mondays. We'll be right back after this. Don't you go anywhere.
That's not how you cross the pedestrian crossing.
Really? One day I just woke up and I saw pedestrian crosswalks on the road. No one really showed me how to use them properly.
Well, this is how it's done. You never cross before doing these things. They might save your life. First, when you get to the crosswalk, you stop. You look left, you look right. If there's a vehicle coming, you put your hand out, making eye contact with the driver, indicating that you want to cross. And only when the vehicle comes to a complete stop, you quickly cross to the other side.
Stop, look, hand out, eye contact. Wait for pedestrian to cross to the other side, then you happily continue on your journey. This message is brought to you by this group of insurance companies, the Traffic Advisory Body, and the Traffic Department.
Remember, if you have flu symptoms, do the right thing and stay at home to avoid giving it to others. Remember, you can be infectious up to a week after developing symptoms, so rest up and take it easy.
folks, welcome back to The Point with Mr. Sylvan McIntyre, and we're talking risk management. I'm just realizing that, in the break we were talking, I realized the substantive point that we wanted to talk about this morning. Risk management is so expansive, but it yet still so important and critical that we had. Let's zero in on the season that we're in. Right. What are some of the things that can go wrong, and how do we deal with them?
Yeah. So at the events, we previously spoke about who's responsible and what we should ensure should happen. Okay, that be it whether there's an instrument or not, the events will happen. People will have sporting events, and people will have injuries. And you would see oftentimes volunteers or people there with stretchers from maybe the Red Cross, St. John Ambulance, the Youth Emergency Action Committee, and other persons who maybe, or the regular volunteers, they are assisting in that. What we would hope to see happen there is that they are more organized. The instruments that they use, the equipment, that they're more modernized and user-friendly, and that the responders themselves, they generate a more professional appearance in dealing with the individuals who will become victims. Some of the common injuries that you're likely to see at sporting events would be people or students may become dehydrated. They will collapse. And the other one you would see, they may have what is called cramps or pull muscle. These things are called quite frequently, and sometimes what we see happening, you'll just see somebody run, pick them up. There isn't even a real assessment. You may also see runners may collapse very heavy. They may fall with some level of force. The sprinters in particular, they may go off and they would fall. And we would prefer that when these athletes fall with such a great impact, that there is an assessment, a very rapid assessment of them before they are taken onto a stretcher or otherwise. We should not sacrifice the timing of the game, the running of the events for the safety of the individual.
It shouldn't compromise that at all.
We shouldn't compromise that, and sometimes there's the haste. There are often times that athletes may have to be moved to the side and be treated before picked up, or before you even approach them, an analysis of the impact, because someone falling may have a concussion or they are likely to have some level of spinal injury, and so the moving of them is also very critical. So you do not want to just come and scoop them up. So what we want to see doing is that assessing of the situation, supporting the head of the individuals, and taking not just a regular stretcher for persons who might have fallen very forcefully. You would want to use a spine board, which is more rigid, to take them off the field. And for those who may have what you call cramps or the pull muscle spasm, you'd want to be able to support them. In some cases, they might be overwhelming in terms of the numbers, and so you may want to help those who can walk to an extent. But one of the initial intervention for those kind of injury, really quickly, is to rest the area that is suspected to be injured. And eventually the entire athlete must rest. So if there is a foot injury, you want to be able to get the foot off, pressure of it immediately. The next thing you would want to do is to get some ice that you can cool it down. And the reason why one will want to do that is because when an athlete is warmed up, the blood flows easier, much quicker. And when the heart is racing as well, you have a greater rush of blood. And so when you have injuries, that pressure will be pushing itself into that area, and it creates a pressure. With pressure and fluid, it creates pain. If you are able to decrease the amount of fluid or that pressure building up into that area, which also eventually will create an inflammation. Now, when you speak about inflammation, it speaks definitely that the area becomes inflamed.
Yes.
And inflammation is created because there's excessive liquid and pressure of fluid and so on that is coming into that area. So the area becomes inflamed, and pain increases with inflammation. If you are able to decrease the blood flow or the amount of fluid rushing or continue to rush into that area, you will reverse slightly the amount of pain, you will decrease swelling from occurring, and if it is a muscle that is locked in a position or pulled in a position for a particular time, what you would want to be able to do really quickly is to be able to relax it. And then relaxing the muscle again is a process that may involve some level of therapy or massage to get it in. So you'd find that when you use a cold compress, you get the ice, the area is compressed and it is massaged. It is not kept constant. If you use some cold compress, it has to be administered over a given period of time. It should not be kept static. It can create another injury where people can have frostbite as a result of having the coal kept in that spot
for too long.
So you may move from one thing into another. So quite a number of these little things can happen, yes.
Right. Now, so you see, having said that, we're already out of time, but it is important, very, very important, and I think over the years, this issue has been trivialized.
Yes.
But now that, sports, athletics and sports, all disciplines in Grenada is on the rise.
Yes.
And it is important that from an administration standpoint, that these things are legislated. It is important.
We're going back to the fundamentals.
Yeah, it has to be. So I would like to see, based on the conversation that we've had, any major event, and not even major, even from a village standpoint, there should be some level of medical or people that know what can happen. So in the event of an eventuality, you know exactly where to go and who is going to deal with it, instead of it being done in an ad hoc manner where a representative from the club, one of your athletes collapse and the club manager or the captain or so. That has to be legislated.
So the importance in closing and so forth of all of these things, it is also health and the economic negative impact. You recognize that if we are able to implement these at all levels, that it eases the stress on the health system and eventually on the economy.
Yeah.
So if we have churches that want to host events and so on, it becomes necessary for the church to apply and ensure that they have people who are there trained to respond if they have emergencies. Because if you don't, what happens? You have to take these people, an ambulance will be called in. It takes resources to get the ambulance and the staff to go.
Yes.
They go to the hospital, it takes the doctor, it takes the nurse, it takes medication. If you are able to prevent that or minimize that, it helps generally to alleviate the bad spending and the unnecessary use of scarce resources.
And not only that too, but the possibility of loss of life, because
loss of life.
I've seen people die.
Critically.
Yeah.
Important.
And a lot of times we are tempted to believe, these things only happen out there. But the world is now a global village, and what happens out there could happen here as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we want to mitigate against that. Mr. McIntyre, it's always a pleasure talking with you.
My brother.
And I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. You're a son of the soil, so you ain't leaving us at all. You would always be with us one way or the other. Like I just said, the world is now a global village. So even if by chance you happen to be out of this part, but we were in touch.
Yes, definitely. And I have been and was in touch.
Yes. So, folks, this is where we've got to wrap it up. All those of you who called and participated one way or the other, thank you very much for your participation. And this is an extended invitation to keep it locked to the Classic Network, because we are with you anywhere and everywhere. Have yourselves a great day now.